आज की ताज़ा खबर। बेंगलुरु में रहने वाले लू और अमेरिका में रहने वाले सिड आपसे कुछ बात करना चाहते हैं। संगीतकार राजेश के साथ आपका स्वागत है लूसिड में।
What's going on, people? I am Sid, and welcome back to another episode of Lucid. In my current journey, I am transitioning from an engineering role to a product management role, and I actually never thought that I had to transition into a different career path during my engineering. And what I realized is like it's not that easy to transition, and I spoke to a bunch of people during my time during my transition period. And one of the people I spoke to and I learned a lot from is Varun Athreya. Varun Athreya is a senior product manager at Palo Alto Networks, and he's on his hobby side. He likes to dig into the venture capital space and help founders and startups with their products. So here we are in this episode to talk with Varun to think about career progression and how we need to think in a long-term frame. So hi Varun, how are you doing today?
Hey Sid, I'm doing good. Nice to be on the show. I guess I self-invited myself, but yeah, nice to be on the show.
No, that's amazing, Varun. I'm guessing like generally people don't think about career deeply. They think about either in terms of money or stability, but this so much more to career in terms of like mixing that professional and personal life together. So I at least for me, in my opinion, I think this episode is very important. So I'm really happy to have you here.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Varun, like, what have you been up to recently? Tell us a bit about what you've been up to.
Recently, I've just been, of course, I have my day job as a senior product manager. The responsibilities have changed a little bit over the past
Right.
1 month or so. And there's obviously more that I'm managing now versus before. That's on the professional side. And in addition to that, like you said, I do want to dabble in venture capital. So I'm also a venture scout for a Bay Area fund that's based out of
Right.
Menlo Park, and through which I've met a lot of different founders in consumer tech, essentially, right?
Right.
And it's been a wonderful ride talking to these founders, understanding their pain points, understanding the origins of their startups, and it definitely gives me a lot of inspiration and a lot of hope that folks like you and me can also start something here in the US.
Right.
So that's been really good. And on the personal side, of course, my wife and I, we just had a baby, so it's been super hectic on that side.
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, and your baby is like really cute. So, yeah, congratulations on your first
Thank you,
baby.
thank you.
Yeah. So Varun, how I want to get this started off with is like you've been in the product management space for a long time, and I want to like go back in time, say like when you finished your master's degree here in the US and you were looking for your first job. And like one of the difficulties here for like any immigrant student or even any undergrad or grad student in the US is getting their job, right? So how has your journey been in terms of finding a job in the US, especially in the product management field? And tell us about that. And also, how do you think in general people should prepare themselves to find a job in a tech career in the US?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot has changed between when I was looking for my first job and now. So I think I'll say things that are more relevant to the current situation, right? Uh, what has changed between when I graduated in 2016 versus now is the flurry of options. When you want to be a product manager, you have a lot of product accelerators that you can join. You can get some good experience getting exposed to the world of product management, working cross-functionally with others, getting some product out there, maybe an MVP, so that you can add it to your CV and then potentially get a job through the same accelerator or on your own. So that is, I would say, very different from what it was before. So people, I would say, definitely have more opportunities through these accelerators, and there are a lot of different schools slash accelerators that people can apply to. So that's one aspect of it. I think during college itself, there are also other opportunities like being a product fellow. There are, I would say, companies like Kleiner Perkins that has a product fellowship, and I would say there are other entities also that has a similar product fellowship aspect where they select maybe 10 to 15 candidates in a year or during the summer that they can intern with those companies. And this is essentially folks get to intern with the portfolio companies of these VC slash PE firms, right? So I think that's a phenomenal opportunity. I'm not sure if it was there in 2016, but at least I came to know of it recently. So that's another great opportunity that people can explore. And the reason why I stated these two aspects, the product accelerators and also the product fellowship programs, is because getting a job in product management, if you go through the job descriptions, you'll see that a lot of them require you to have prior experience, which is obviously a chicken and egg scenario. So a chicken and egg scenario presents a cold start problem, right? So in order to solve for that cold start problem, you got to start somewhere. And these two aspects would be a really good starting point for folks, right? However, since these product accelerators and product fellowships are highly coveted, maybe not available to everyone, I think folks can still learn to think about how they can better their tasks on a daily basis. Maybe there are things that they're doing that could be automated. Maybe things they are doing and they go, hey, I wish I could do something else to save time, to save money, or to maybe make more money, right? So these are the really good opportunities that one can find. And I feel like as a college student here in the US, there are plenty of opportunities for you to optimize because you're obviously strapped for time, and you're obviously you don't have a lot of financial resources available to you, right? For the most part. I mean, I'm not saying all students belong to that category, but I would say most. So yeah, like they say, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I would say these are as a college student, you get to experience these opportunities where you might even come up with a new product idea, maybe an MVP, and then you could potentially again talk to some advisors at the university or even outside of the university, and then get some help and introduce a product to the market, right? So that's another way to think about it. And another thing I've seen folks do is to also subscribe to these VC newsletters, right? The advantage with subscribing to VC newsletters is because, again, through a VC, you get access to jobs belonging to the portfolio companies. So again, when you're a college student, you always look at processes that are scalable, right? You don't want to be doing one thing n number of times. So
correct.
You might as well just subscribe to the VC newsletter. You get to know more about the industry that you care about. Maybe it's AI/ML, blockchain, B2B SaaS, consumer tech, what have you. And then you also get access to maybe their portfolio company jobs as well, right?
Right.
So that is another good way to get some exposure to jobs that may not be, I would say, well published on other forums like LinkedIn and other places, right? So that's another good avenue, I would say, right, to think about it. And then I have also seen talent collectives, begin to develop. I'm not sure if it was really popular in 2016, but then right now I've seen quite a few people, gather a good, talent pool and call it a talent collective, right? It's like a marketplace
Right.
where candidates can come in, submit the resume, say that you're really good at XYZ. This is their USP. And then you also have recruiters who get in touch with candidates, and depending upon the experience and their requirements, obviously conversations happen, and potentially people also end up getting jobs or internships and so on and so forth, right? So apart from that, I still feel like I think something that you've been doing on LinkedIn is to publish content. I still feel like
Right.
that is a very good way to increase exposure. Let recruiters know that you are interested in XYZ fields, that you're, say, you're really interested. Maybe you're a thought leader in that space, and also it's a good practice to write, because written communication is anyway super important when you eventually become a PM, and that's also one way to get a lead for a job as well through a recruiter, right? So
Right.
so yeah, bottom line is, in 2022, 2023, going forward, I feel like candidates have to differentiate themselves, maybe through product building, through low code, no code tools, maybe by being part of these communities, talent collective and talent pools, that help them gain access to internship or full-time opportunities, and so on and so forth, right? It's time to think different, but I would say that students should not get overwhelmed by the sea of opportunities and how much they need to do to get to their destination, which is getting a PM job, right? You need to think big, but start small. Don't get overwhelmed. This is what I would, how I
Right.
would put it.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And like coming to your personal journey in 2016, you did a similar degree as mine. It was an engineering management degree. You were an engineer before. What was your journey like when you were looking out for your first product management jobs, and how did you view your journey into the product management career?
Yeah, I think I chose product management soon after graduating because I was slightly familiar with it, and I felt like I have a good success rate. I could have a good success rate with product management. Because
Right.
here in the US, obviously, a lot of my friends were interested in consulting. That did not appeal to me very much. I was exposed to product management because I was part of a Scrum team at a startup that later got acquired by VMware, and I was seeing what the business analysts slash product managers used to do there. So really liked what they were doing in terms of market analysis, in terms of having building a roadmap, understanding customer problems, translating them into valuable solutions. So was really excited by it, and yeah, that's what compelled me to even take up my master's and eventually move into product management. Um, and maybe this is a good opportunity for me to also talk about a mental model. I think I came across this in Shane Parrish's podcast, or his book rather. It talks about circle of competence, right? So maybe my core circle was engineering, right? But then if I were to just
Right.
go to the periphery of it, maybe I knew some things about product management. I had a decent, I would say, a way to get into product management because of my prior networking, and also maybe have a decent chance at excelling in product management, right?
Right.
So which is obviously very different from journalism, because I I have no history of journalism myself. I've not started a magazine in college,
Okay.
and I would not have a great chance of excelling at journalism either. So again, talking about the mental models, I think circle of competence is something I think about all the time. Even when I'm doing something, I think about how these skills are transferable, right? From the
Right.
core circle to uh, another concentric circle, right? And I feel like that also applies to a lot of different startup founders. If you see what they were working as previously, maybe as engineers, maybe as product managers. If you look at the companies that they end up founding, it's in a peripheral space. It's not in an altogether orthogonal space, right? So
Right.
there are a ton of transferable skills that they take with them, domain knowledge, and they apply it to maybe building a new product, founding a company, maybe working on a new project. So yeah, circle of competence is super important. One thing I would also like to add is that once you know what is your core circle and what is something that you're not super confident of, then you also will start to embrace humility. You will start to let go
Right.
of ego and start from scratch, right? So that you can learn the tricks of the trade. You can be amazing at this peripheral new field per se.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Yeah. And when you think about product management, it's different from engineering in the sense that product management depends on the domain you're working in. So, say, product management in an e-commerce company is very different from a product management in a say in a tools company like a B2B SaaS company, right? So, did you ever think about doing product management in a specific domain, and how did you approach it with respect to that?
In a specific domain, I think I feel like you can, or I was able to get to that understanding only after experiencing product management for a while, right?
Right.
So again, back in 2016, maybe I did not have amazing exposure, so I did not obviously know the various layers or the domains of product management, right? So instead of picking something without really experiencing product management, I wanted to have a couple of gigs and then try to understand where I fit in, what am I positioned
Right.
to excel at. So for example, I started off working in the gig economy space, right? Did I know that I would be working in that space? Not really. But then I got an opportunity, and then it was a wonderful experience to help craft an MVP. It was 0 to 1 kind of an opportunity, and yeah, so worked in that domain, and then moved to a B2B privacy SaaS company later on, right? And then that sort of laid down the foundations for identity and security experience, and through which I got a role at Palo Alto Networks, right? So I feel like there are a lot of transferable skills, right, in all these different roles, and so yeah, that's definitely helped me. But
Right.
but yeah, I never had an intention of just working in one specific field, because I am definitely someone who wants to be well-rounded in product management,
Right.
right? Whether it comes to B2B to C, B2B, B2C product experience, and also the various aspects of product building, whether it is onboarding, growth, technical product management, telemetry, and
Right.
and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, that's basically my short answer.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you think like people who are thinking about getting into the product management space or are early in the product management space, they need to try out different roles before pigeonholing themselves into one specific field of product management? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that's always beneficial, because you get to experience different aspects of product building, right? because with
Right.
each and every lane of product that you mentioned, e-commerce versus B2B versus B2C, I feel like there are challenges that one might come across. One might also obviously be effective at tackling and excelling at. So it presents new challenges, right?
Correct.
But the thing is, there are elements that you could still consider to be transferable across these different product lanes. And for example, even if you work in e-commerce, for you will learn about B2C, right? Or let's say it's a B2C e-commerce store, then you will learn about the B2C aspect of it, maybe the metrics that
Correct.
matter, that you want to
Yeah.
optimize for. Maybe it's the average cart size, average order size, gross merchandise value, and so on and so forth, which is obviously slightly different from when you're working on a B2B, but you will obviously have an eye for KPIs, those metrics that really matter,
Right.
right? And then in the e-commerce space, you'll obviously care about your consumers. Consumers are your customers in this case. The way you get feedback from them in an e-commerce venture is slightly different from how you would probably get feedback from your enterprise customers in a B2B SaaS
Correct.
environment, right?
Yeah.
So there are some nuances, but there are a lot of things that I would consider to be transferable. So, like you said, instead of pigeonholing oneself to a specific domain, it definitely makes sense to experience a few things, because you
Right.
never know what you're going to like, right? And what you're
Exactly.
going to like
Yeah.
is dependent on so many factors. It's not just the domain; it's also the people that you work with, and
Correct.
how confident you feel within a corporate culture as well, right? So yeah, that there are a lot of a lot of factors, and again, if there are things that are super technical and you're really good at the technical product management, maybe you could consider that to be a USP, and you might head down that direction for a few years, until
Right.
you decide to change course, maybe move to B2C product management or something of that sort, right? So
Right.
yeah, that's what I would say about not pigeonholing oneself, and having an open mind, embracing humility,
Exactly.
and but I feel like candidates or PM aspirants, PMs in general, should be able to journal and understand the nuances of the types of products or the product lanes that they're working on, because a lot of
Right.
things are transferable. And again, once you probably become a manager from an IC, there'll be another layer of challenge that you'll have to come across, and as you prepare for your role by journaling, by taking into account what you did in the past, influencing what you want to do in the future. I think it's a really good practice to having a broad skill set, broad experience as well across different products, instead of pigeonholing. I would certainly like to not pigeonhole myself, right?
Right. Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. And the next question I have is, when you talk to a lot of, like, say, PM enthusiasts, it's like the first things that that comes to their mind when they want to get into their first PM role, it's like FANG, right? Like APM roles, associate product manager roles at big tech companies. Like, what do you think about, like, people getting into big tech companies versus startups? Like, how should people choose, like, say, this or that?
I would say again depends on a lot of different factors, right? So some people I've spoken to, they don't seem to be fans of working in big companies, where big is like more than,
Right.
say, 5,000 employees or 2,000 employees, right? Uh, I mean, again, they've come to the conclusion by working at several different startups, and then they feel like, hey, I work better in a startup. I like that environment. I like to be bogged down by a lot of processes and stuff like that. Uh, but So there are definitely pros and cons, I would say, working in big tech versus startups. Um, but all in all, I think a big factor is the product that you'll be managing. What part of the life cycle is it in matters a lot. Because if it's
Right.
a 0 to 1 kind of a moment, then you will have to wear a lot of hats, irrespective of whether you're in a startup or in a big tech company, right?
Correct.
And if it's a slightly more mature product, whether it is a startup, or maybe it's a startup will not be a startup when the product is slightly mature. Maybe it will have grown on to become a big
Yeah.
company. Uh, so by then you will have more resources available so that you can delegate work, and there'll be less pressure on you, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
I feel like it folks have to think about what kind of products they want to work on, right? What excites them. That's one thing, and the other thing is the product at the stage of the product life cycle. So, do they want to work on creating something new under some product
Yeah.
leadership, or do they want to work on something that's already hit product market fit? Not I wouldn't say it's like mature per se, but just hit product market fit because they're comfortable with all the foundations are laid down, and then they want to
Yeah.
basically add some new features so that they want to keep customers happy and also acquire new customers, or maybe do something known as a PMF expansion where they add new use cases to sort of expand
Correct.
the product market fit. So it really depends. So I think people have to think about what kind of products that they want to work on. Um,
Right.
then they could certainly talk to people working at those big tech firms to get a perspective, right? Because that is always helpful. Wisdom of the crowd beats the experience of one person,
Yeah.
right? So that matters a lot. And then ultimately, like I said, the product life cycle or the stage of the product life cycle matters a lot as well. Right? Because the mindset I think required is kind of different. For a 0 to 1 moment, it's
Correct.
you'll have to do a lot of customer discovery,
Yeah.
and you'll have to fight more battles
True.
than other a product if it is in other stages of its life cycle, right? So the mindset required is different. I think more than the brand itself. I know brand entices a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm going to join this company or that company." But ultimately, I feel like people should remember that the company they work for does not define them. They're more than the company they work for, and and yeah, I feel like there should be more factors considered while making that decision, just than just say, "Hey, I'm working at a big tech company." Because what if you're working at a big ass company, but you won't have much to show in the next 1 year, right? What if you're
Right.
owner of something so small that it's not even impactful? You might have a very good brand on the resume, but then you might
Correct.
not have a lot of achievements under your belt, right?
Yeah.
So so people have to really think about it. So maybe
True.
through just by reading the job description, it may not be super clear because the rotational programs, they're not
Right.
very specific. So it really is incumbent on the candidate to elicit those nuances during the course of interviews, to understand, okay, what are how many times am I, or how many teams am I going to be working on in this rotation, right?
Right.
And can I, if let's say as part of the first rotation, I really like what I'm working on, can I stay with that team or not, or whatever other question that really matters to them? I think that is an opportunity for them to really get an understanding of what the rotational product management entails at these companies,
Yeah.
and and yeah, I also understand the goals of what they're being hired for, right? Because if I feel like if there are no goals, then it puts the candidate or the PM aspirant in a very awkward position. Like I said, after one
Correct.
year, there may not be much to showcase,
Showcase.
and that might not
Yeah.
be a very good position to be in.
True. That is true. Yeah. And like with respect to the situation that we are in right now, like where companies have slowed down hiring, companies are unsure of their hiring needs for for the near future. How should like candidates generally think about this situation, and how should they approach it?
So, if we consider ourselves to be part of an economic downturn for the next, say 12, 18 months, then one might have to understand or at least know where there is more job security, relatively speaking, right? Is it at a startup
Correct.
that's super well funded, or is it at a big tech company that is, has experienced and has
Right.
potential for amazing growth in the future, right? So with the big companies, yeah, you do get some perks, right? There is definitely more stability, but then not all big companies are created equal. We did
Correct.
see folks, freeze hiring or even laying off, right? And I'm talking about public companies that have done that.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you want to be part of a team that is, or part of a product or a company that is sort of, you could say, recession proof. When I say recession proof, it's obviously difficult to find these kinds of products, but generally speaking, in a downturn, at least what I've understood from others is you've got the CFO, you've got the CIO. All these folks are thinking about how do we reduce our spend on software. So, what
Yeah.
software is something that these folks, enterprises, consumers cannot live without, right? And I would say those are the companies that you could, as an aspirant, be really bullish on, right?
Right.
And I feel like right now, at this very moment, I think cybersecurity is one of those hotspots. If
Yeah.
you see if
Right.
you see
Right.
some major cybersecurity companies are doing fantastic at the moment. So yeah, we can see that companies are not reducing the spend on cybersecurity.
Correct.
So like that, maybe there are other aspects. At least I've heard the consumers in the consumer space. There's definitely some thinking that goes behind. Oh, okay, do I have to really spend that extra $10 on this streaming service,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe the next maybe 12 to 18 months are going to be a bit difficult when it comes to hiring. But
Yeah.
if folks understand what would be considered maybe slightly recession-proof software, then that is what they can be bullish on, right? That's how I
Yeah.
would put it.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. And the next part I want to talk about is when any product manager or any tech enthusiast goes on YouTube and checks for how do I become a product manager, tips to become a product manager. You get all these frameworks, you get like how to crack the interviews and stuff. But what happens next, right? Like what happens after you get like a role or an internship or your first PM job? Like what do you think a candidate should do like during the first few weeks of his PM internship or PM job?
Yeah, I feel like I think you and I have spoken about this, but people have a tendency to get carried away once they get a role, whether it's an internship or a
Yeah.
full-time role. So my advice is to not get carried away. And just because you've gotten a PM role, it doesn't mean a lot. You can consider it that way, right? So that it keeps you
Okay.
grounded, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what they can do to sort of help elevate their game, PM game is to know more about the product itself. Number one, what
Right.
is their lane of ownership? Understand this by talking to the manager and understand what the goals are for the next 6 months, maybe 12 months.
Right.
Because if you understand the goals, and then if you understand your lane of ownership, then you know what knobs you'll have to turn in order to achieve those goals, right?
Correct.
So the other aspect is understanding the product culture. you understand, let's say you spend some time understanding the product, how it works, what are the use cases, who uses it, how do we position this, how do we go to market with this, and so on and so forth. Then you need to understand the product culture in the sense, okay, let's say there's a new feature request or new customer problem that comes in. What are the, how does it even come to the product team, right? Does the product team actually do active discovery work? Or do they get this data from maybe the sales engineers or people who are slightly closer to the customers, right? So understanding that entire journey where, hey, okay, so let's say there's a feature request that's come in, and then what is the process of getting this feature request prioritized, right? So companies approach it differently. Some companies are very, they have a rigorous process of understanding the problem statement, where the problem statement just consists of the problem itself. There is no solution associated with it because you really want to get to the crux of the issue. Because again, a given problem can be solved in n ways, right? But you should not let the solution sort of influence the way you craft a problem statement. So, there are these nuances where you need to know how you will have to bring forth this feature request in front of leadership, right? Whether is it through like a formal review, whether it is more informal. Maybe in some startups it's slightly more informal. So you'll have to understand those nuances, right? And once you understand that, then you'll have to see how do I translate this? How do I prioritize this? What is the release cadence? And then how do we communicate these updates to customers? Because with customers, you got to set the right expectations, right? You cannot say, hey, yeah, we'll get this done in 3 months. And what does that 3 months mean? Is it, are you referring to a specific quarter? Is there a release, lined up for that quarter? So you have to know all those nuances to be able to craft that message as well. Right. And then examples of understanding product culture could also be, support for if your product is on a desktop, for example, then you'll also have to make sure that the product works on different operating systems, and these operating systems, change on a yearly basis, right? So you'll also have to understand when do you announce support, what is the support statement, and so on and so forth. But in order to ultimately, let's say once the feature is prioritized, you want to get that out to the market, then you'll obviously have to work with engineering. You'll have to work with a cross-functional team. And you can just, work with them and get it out versus truly understanding their motivations, their, concerns, because maybe that engineering pool is shared across different teams as well. Maybe the QA pool is also shared across different teams as well. So understanding those become critical to establishing good relationships and getting stuff out the door. Right? So that is super important in terms of understanding product culture. And another thing that I would say is from an HR perspective, understand who initiates these one-on-ones, right? Is it the manager? Is it you? Understanding all those soft aspects, and then understanding how the goals are set, and so on and so forth. Because ultimately, you want to set yourself up for success, right?
Correct.
And you want to be able to do all the right things. And I would also say that in terms of understanding the product, if there's any material out there that has been published in a learning portal, because I feel like a lot of companies do have some kind of a learning management system. So getting access to learning management systems and really going through the content of maybe use cases, different problem statements, different features that were launched before, understanding the motivations would really give you that much needed knowledge. right? And it's not,
Correct.
and again, that is not just with respect to the features, but it also talks about, how it is priced, how is it licensed, and, the whole shebang.
Makes sense, yeah. You mentioned the one-on-ones with your manager, and in my short career, I've had about like three different managers, and I've realized the importance of a good relationship with your manager. Uh, how do you build a good relationship with your manager and make sure you have like clear goals set out for your job in general?
Yeah, that's I think it's $1 million question, right? So I think what's really worked for me is understanding. Again, try to offer clarity to others about what you're doing, and try to seek clarity from others about what you need to do. So, from the manager, especially, it becomes super important that you establish these, I would say, these unwritten rules, right? When, okay, how frequently are we meeting? What are we discussing? What's the agenda for, one-on-one? Hopefully, it's not just a status update, right?
Right.
Because you want to use the one-on-one time to talk about maybe some, difficult aspects of maybe product building, relationship building, and maybe interpersonal aspects as well, right?
Right.
So that is one thing, and ultimately, I feel like in order to build that relationship with the manager, I feel like that connection, not just the fact that that person is a manager and you are a subordinate, but also there needs to be
Correct.
some layers of connection, right? Maybe you share the same hobby, or maybe
Right.
you're from the same city, or you do similar things, or trying to find that connection becomes super super important in my opinion, right?
Right.
Because again, that's when people open up, right? Maybe try to find something common, right? And then try to build that really good connection, but also professionally being upfront about what is possible, what's not possible within a certain time frame,
Right.
giving updates, taking ownership. I think these are all aspects that I think managers do like, right?
Correct.
And being upfront with your manager about your roles and responsibilities, in the sense, hey, I know I've worked on this product area for a while, but I want exposure to something else, and I feel like I can take those responsibilities now. Right? Being upfront about,
Right.
do you want to add more responsibilities, or do you want to hold off on getting those added responsibilities
Yeah.
right now because of other, a personal situation or whatever. I think that's super super important as well, right? So I feel like having an honest conversation with your manager about the different levels of product manager career at the company also makes a
Right.
lot of sense. Maybe there are times where the company has published a standard chart where this title corresponds to this level of responsibility,
Right.
right? So that also gives you a picture into what do you need to do to get to the next stage, right? Because you want to keep that conversation transparent, as transparent as possible,
Correct.
because you want to know, how do you get to, say, level 2 from level 1, right? Because if,
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
that path is not super clear, then you can keep working for forever and not seeing light at the end of the tunnel, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, that becomes super important in my opinion.
Makes sense. Yeah. And with respect to product management, there's a huge aspect of building relationships with your adjacent teams. So, say engineering, design, etc. So, and you do not have direct authority on them, and you have to lead by influence, right? So, how do you do that? How do you approach this on setting and building these relationships?
Yeah, I think during the pandemic it was a lot harder, but now that folks are coming back to the office, it's become slightly easy because I feel like through email communication may seem more stern than when it
Yeah.
is in face to face, right?
Correct.
So again, I think when you are building a connection, it's not just, hey, I work on this product, you work on that product, we got to get stuff done, and let's meet. It's also, again, building some other commonality or some other connection with them that really helps.
Correct.
And then I feel like if the team works on, say, a customer escalation, or not just a feature, because I feel like features, yeah, they'll get rolled out, but then as you scale the product, you will also have a lot of customer escalations to deal with. And I feel like
Correct.
I have realized during customer escalations, when as a PM you take that ownership, you get the engineering team together, and you sort of either give them direction or ask the right questions to head in the right direction. I think that also helps with the bonding, right? Because guess what? Maybe you meet them in the cafeteria next time, and then you'll, maybe laugh about some customer escalation
Yeah.
where
Correct.
it was, we look for all the things in the world, but then we missed, something small, or maybe, you would basically say that, hey, it's such a relief to get that off our back because it was such a difficult customer, or difficult problem to
Yep.
work with. So again, I feel like that also builds some kind of bonding, where you worked on a given
Right.
problem, and then obviously there are some jokes that come with it, some hard times that come with it. You can obviously reminisce, right? So I feel like generally speaking, relationship building is all about, in a way, creating memories, right? So the more memories you share with someone or some teams, they'll sort of remember you, or at least they'll respect your word.
Right.
They'll be open to having that meeting as well, because I feel like sometimes when um, maybe sometimes when people don't see a lot of value in a meeting, they might decline immediately. But then if the relationship is really good with you, maybe they're willing to hear you
Correct.
out, right?
Yeah.
And then
That's true.
so that matters. That really matters, right? And also I think ultimately it's like, I think, like Adam Grant says, it's lead with giving, right? If, again, during these customer escalations, during feature delivery, if the engineering really needs your help on something, be willing to meet them, talk with them, understand the pain points.
Yeah.
Maybe they need a UX asset, get that done as soon as possible. Maybe they need
Correct.
some UX copy to go on a specific page, get that done immediately.
Yeah.
Or maybe they need the PM to make a decision on some kind of a workflow, right? So helping unblock them is something that they would really appreciate, because you're helping them save
Correct.
time. You're helping improve
Yeah.
dev productivity as well, right? So I feel like the more PMs invest in giving back to all these folks that they work with cross
Right.
functionally, they can definitely build a good relationship. Apart from that, I feel like, again, setting expectations is super, super important, right? And setting expectations with the right level of clarity is also super important. And that's another thing
Okay.
that engineering, QA, and design folks, or any other folks that PMs work with, would be super happy to see in PMs, right? So
Right.
so yeah, embracing giving, that's one aspect. And then understanding that they obviously don't report into you, so being open to
Correct.
having those conversations, taking ownership of feature delivery or customer escalations with engineering, especially, so that they know that they can depend on you. I think that'll
Yeah.
also help garner a lot of respect. And then being decisive, generally speaking, in all these meetings, because you, as a PM, you will have to make some tough calls sometimes, and people might
Correct.
not like it. But you'll have to choose the lesser of all evils, right? In the sense,
Yeah.
maybe there are some things that the customer does not like, but you know what? That's the best the engineering and QA team can do. That's the best timeline that they
Correct.
can, provide a fix for something or a feature being delivered. So that is what you'll have to communicate to the customers as well, because
True.
you obviously have to keep in mind the expectations and challenges of your dev and your extended team
Correct.
as well.
Yeah. That makes sense. The one thing that I really like when you spoke about is like the strength of your relationship is like directly proportional to the number of memories you have with them. And that's like the first time I've heard that, I'm like, yeah, that clicked. Like, that makes so much sense. If I've spent more time with them, like, I've had like a lot of good memories with them, I would be open to like talking to them, even if the meeting is of not that much value or I'm super busy. I would still make time for them. So, yeah, that was a really interesting analogy.
Yeah, and not just your team, right? Even I'm pretty sure you're talking to a lot of people through these podcasts yourself. And
Yeah,
I think in the world of networking, sometimes you just meet people once or twice, and the relationship just dies down in a way, right? But
correct. Yeah,
then, let's say you keep in touch, you talk to them, you end up knowing more about them, and you'll be able to
true.
connect with them better, and then even potentially collaborate with them for on a project
Yeah,
and stuff like that, right? So again, understanding that working cross-functionally is not a mere transaction, or should not be
correct.
treated on a transaction basis. It should be treated as a relationship, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, that, and also clearly communicating, written or verbal communication. I think that is
exactly.
I think the folks will be super appreciative of that, because that's where
True.
the PM takes ownership, is decisive, and is the voice of reason as well. Right.
Correct.
So I think that overall definitely helps build a strong foundation for a relationship.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that insight. That was like that whatever you said, like it really clicked. Especially when people talk about leading with influence, they say about being decisive. They talk about setting expectations, but the aspect of relationship building, people generally miss out. And like this brought out that answer, so I'm really happy about that.
Awesome.
And the next part I want to talk about is, you mentioned this once and when we were previously talking about it, and also a lot of people talk about it is treating your career like a product, and being the product manager for your career. Tell us more about that. Like, what does that essentially mean?
Yeah. So treating your career like a product essentially means that, just like a product, there's obviously a 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and greater than 10 moments, right? So what that essentially entails is having a roadmap of what you want to do in a specific year, like say year 2022. Here are my professional goals, right?
Okay.
Maybe a candidate wants to maybe obtain the first PM role, for example, and then they obtain that role. Then they understand the goals, they understand the ownership. Then they want to learn more about a specific area. Maybe somebody gets a role at the ads team, on the ads team at Roku, for example. So let's say they don't know anything about ads, so that year becomes really important for them to learn more about ads, the ecosystem,
Correct.
the competitive landscape, and all of that stuff. And once they do that, maybe they work for 2 years, maybe as part of a rotational program, and then they feel really confident about the whole ads landscape. So they might consider
Right.
moving into another company that pays them better,
Correct.
maybe, or has better perks, or whatever be the case, right? This is not to
Right.
pull down Roku or anything. Maybe it's just a preference of the candidate, right? So having a roadmap essentially means, or treating career like a product essentially means, having these long-term goals and short-term goals. Right? Short-term goals is, of course, maybe learning a new domain, maybe making some
Right.
improvements in your understanding of AI and ML, the way it is used for ads, or the way it is used for photos, or some other some classification problems or whatnot. But then long-term goals could also mean that, hey, I want to have this title or this, say, I want to not be just an IC in the next 5 years. I want to be a manager, right?
Right.
So what would help me get there? Would working in the
Correct.
current company help me get there, or should I absolutely change jobs in getting there, right? So I feel like getting promoted within the same company is definitely tough, or it's seen as a sign of progression, in my view, than if you were to just change jobs for a better title, right? Like for example, I've seen
Right.
people who work for 1 year at a particular company, at a junior PM level, then the next year they become a PM by changing companies, and they become a senior PM by changing another company, and so on and so forth.
Another company.
So, I mean, that's one way to look at it, not criticizing that, but I feel like growing within the same org is definitely more, uh, difficult because people know what you're good at, what you're not good at, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's definitely more challenging, and yeah, so that's where understanding those goals, having those conversations with your manager become really important, because your long-term goals would be, hey, I want to be a manager, I want to be a principal, I want to be a group product manager, whatever, right? And then you want to understand from your manager, how do you get that,
Yeah.
right? And then the other aspect is, again, using product experience. At least what I've tried to do is to dabble in venture capital, right? And I did become an accredited investor recently. So I've been, obviously talking to founders, and I've been talking to a lot of great folks. Made some, investments as well, and yeah, so that's basically how I'm thinking about venture capital. Because again, it's a cold
Right.
start problem. I don't have any experience in venture capital, but let us say I want to make a mark there in the next whatever X years. How do I get there? It's
Right.
by laying down a foundation, right? So in terms of my own roadmap, like I said, I recently became an accredited investor, and then I became a founding member of Sweater VC Fund. It's a company based out of Denver, Colorado, which is truly democratizing access to VC. And then
Okay.
later on, I applied for the Venture Scout program at Grishin.
Right.
So I did that, and then I also applied for the VC University scholarship track as well, which I recently obtained. So this is me just laying down the foundations, right?
Right.
And then this is obviously in addition to what I'm doing as a PM.
Correct.
So I would say not everybody wants to do this, right? Maybe some people want to really excel at design. So you can be a PM, but then on the side, you could also maybe engage with the design community a lot more.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
Maybe you can work with founders who are building products for the design community. You can beta test the products. You can give some feedback to them. So the more you start embedding yourself in the startup ecosystem, offering help, the founders like it, and guess what? They might also want to bring you on as an advisor, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And and yeah, or even potentially, ask you if you were to angel invest in their company as well, right?
Correct.
So there are lots of opportunities right now uh, for people to really craft their career like a product. So just like a product or a company has, Act One, Act Two, or Act N, I think product managers could also think of their careers that way, where initially, they
Right.
would be just a junior product manager, an IC, then a manager, and then maybe they want to, branch out into, say, venture capital. Because I've seen a lot of product managers do this in the recent past, right?
Right.
And then yeah, they probably join a VC firm where they're principal or yeah, maybe principal or a VP, and then they might even start their
Right.
own fund, having gained some experience as a principal at one of these VC firms, right? So again, think of your career like a product, but yeah, have a roadmap. Think big, but start small, because it's additive, right? It's one that leads you to another. So
True.
you don't have to be overwhelmed at, oh, okay, I don't even know how to become this. It's so difficult. There is so much of you don't have to surround yourself with negativity. You can think big, but
Okay.
start small. Have a roadmap of what do you want to do, say this quarter versus the next, so that you're setting expectations for yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not running around like a chicken with its head cut off, right?
Correct.
So you don't want that to happen, and and yeah. So obviously, as I think if we people have families and stuff, time management becomes even more important.
True.
So yes, setting your expectations from a professional standpoint also becomes super important, right? So that's my idea of treating career like a product, where it doesn't mean you have to be in product management throughout, but
True.
you have to
Yeah.
define your own career evolution, right? And there is nothing wrong with being in product management itself throughout.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't see myself doing that. I want to do other things as well, right? And yeah, so folks can think about it that way. So,
Right.
and again, it's like you cannot switch immediately, right? You need to lay down the foundations, and it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Correct.
So yeah, that's what I mean by having a roadmap, setting expectations, following through, and also these are the little wins. Like for example, getting that venture scout, being
Yeah.
part of that community was super helpful to me, and also getting that VC university scholarship, really pumped me, right? So I could certainly use that when I'm applying for other maybe venture scout roles, or anything of that sort
Correct.
in the future, or maybe
Yeah.
becoming part of a startup community and whatnot, right? So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what I mean by treating your career like a product.
Definitely. Like one thing I really liked is the expectation setting, where generally we set expectations with others, like in terms of professional or personal lives, but generally we miss the trick of setting expectations for ourselves itself. So I think that's like my big takeaway from this part of the conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And again,
Yeah.
another thing that I would like to add is recently I felt like from a health perspective, I was not taking care of myself. So I've
Right.
tried to improve my diet as well, right? So, and again, I am using the same principles, laying down the foundations. I'm not going crazy, going to the gym every day or anything of that
Yeah.
sort. I just do a little bit
Right.
of cardio, have some decent diet that I follow,
Correct.
and again, I'm not changing everything at once.
You're setting the
Slowly
foundation.
changing
Yeah.
stuff, right? And when I'm talking about rate of change, I'm also reminded of another mental model called uh, I don't remember the exact name, but it's by a person by the name Stuart Brand. So he spoke about the rate of change or the relative rate of change of different aspects in a society, like culture. It could be infrastructure.
Correct.
It could be the trees. It could be your own house, and so on and so forth. And taking inspiration from that, I think Gartner, which is a premier ID consulting company, has also come up with their own mental model for software products, which I would urge
Right.
you and listeners to actually check out. Right, basically the there are a lot of insights for young PMs out there, right? In terms of what products are likely to change fast versus what products are likely to change at a slower pace, right? Like for example, some
Right.
of the big systems like your HR management system, your ERP, and all of that stuff is they do see a low rate of change in terms of new features being added and so on and so forth, versus something that a company is actively developing its own products. So obviously we'd see a greater rate of change. So yeah, that also gives you clues into hey, do you want to be working in the IT department of the company, because
Correct.
that has different expectations, that has different product delivery, I would say cadence um, and so on and so forth. Or do you want to work on internal tools being developed by the company? Or do
Yeah.
you want to work on tools or products that are being developed for external customer consumption?
Right.
Right. So, yeah, that's a great mental model. I can probably share the link with you later on.
Yes, that'll be great. I'll add it in the description of the podcast. And when you mentioned about this mental model earlier in our conversation before, when I read through it, I'm just like, wow, like I never thought about it in this way. And like that changed, like completely shifted my perspective and like to think about rate of change of things in general. So, which was a really good read for me.
Yep. But that
But
also, just to sort of continue your thought, right? That also
yeah,
tells you that if there are PMs working on products um, where they're working with enterprises, right? There is a resistance to move on to newer versions of the product as well,
correct. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So by understanding this mental model, you also understand that, hey, at all these companies where your enterprise product is just another product used by the company, they are not going to be your beta testers forever, right? They're not going to adopt the
Correct.
latest and greatest software. They will adopt stuff that absolutely matters to them, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, so this also sort of helps you determine your end of sale, end of life aspects of your software product as well, because not everyone's going to be off that current version and migrating to a newer
Yeah.
version as soon as the new version is out, right? Takes some time.
Correct.
So there's going to be some EOL and EOS definitions that depend on that decision, and also the associated customer communications with that as well.
That's true. That's definitely true. And I think like with this mental model, I want to end the podcast. Like I think it's like the perfect mental model to end with. So yeah, thank you so much, Varun. This was a great conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me once again, Sid, and it was awesome talking to you.
Yes, awesome. That's all, people, for this episode. Tune into another episode of Lucid coming up next week. And I'm Sid, and this is